Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we will talk about the art of big data storytelling. My name is Sekou Tyler,
And I am Chantilly Dragonar.
and I am the founder and CEO of Royal Blue Analytics.
I'm the founder and CEO of Millennials in Data.
So, a little bit of background about myself. I have 10 plus years of BI and data analytics experience. I pride myself in being a utility knife in the industry. I'm a founder and CEO of Royal Blue Analytics, a company I founded a year and a half ago. I do a lot of community engagement. I'm a Tableau social ambassador, Tableau user group leader, Black in Data, and the Nashville Tableau user group. And you can find me on all platforms at SQL, Twitter, Blue Sky, all the above. And then certifications, as I mentioned earlier, I pride myself in being a utility knife. So I'm Tableau certified, Databricks certified, Alteryx, and amongst other things. And then also have content. 10 Minute Tuesday podcast can be found every Tuesdays on your local streaming applications. So Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube.
And a little bit about myself. I've been in the BI and data analytics space for about 14 years now. As I mentioned, I am the founder and CEO of Millennials in Data, #MAD. It was a nonprofit organization that I started in 2018 to help millennials understand this data-driven environment that we live in. So to date, I've had over 100 graduates and about 10 different cohorts who have gone through that program. Recently, I've also been inducted into the Tableau Visionary Hall of Fame, and I am a former Tableau Public Ambassador.
So today we're going to walk through the art of big data storytelling. One, we're going to talk about the importance of storytelling in data analysis, understanding big data within the modern data stack, stakeholder expectations, and the dashboard development methodology. So we want to talk about the importance of storytelling and data analysis. The first step that we want to do is talk about how storytelling can actually humanize data. So when you work with different industries and different components of it, we might look at numbers and rows and columns, but there's really a humanized component to it. So whether you're working with healthcare or supply chain or even manufacturing, one of the biggest pieces when it comes to storytelling in the data analysis is how can I humanize this to what the actual person is doing within the industry. The next person we do is that storytelling can enhance the comprehension of what you're trying to grasp. So the stories can provide the context and there's meaning, and the comprehension can really help aid in the storytelling process. And then ultimately, what we want to do is help drive decision making. So creating really good narratives derived from data can encourage the decision making process, and it can help inform strategic directions and actions and things that we want, ultimately people to do with the decision that we're giving them, the information that we're giving them. So understanding big data within the modern data stack. Number one is, what is the definition of big data? What are the characteristics of big data? Big data is such a word that gets thrown around. Is it volume? Is it variety? Is it velocity? Is it number of records? What does that really mean? And then we're going to walk through the introduction of the medallion architecture, which is a concept that is not necessarily tool specific. It's more so a philosophy when it comes to big data. So number one, big data is huge, right? There isn't an actual criteria that says this thing is a big data. So just because something is 100 terabytes, 200 terabytes, wherever it is, doesn't technically mean that because it went over this threshold, that means it's big data. But often big data is large volume, high velocity, and a lot of just different information. But there isn't a set number that says, hey, this is actually a big data development. But if nothing else, from a data perspective, if you don't take anything else, I believe this is the golden rule that should be applied to big data architecture and warehouse. And what it is data should be transformed as far upstream as possible and as far downstream as necessary. So what this means is that if you can do any type of transformation, any type of cleansing further upstream in the process when you are capturing your information or removing unnecessary noise, do that there because it's done at the source. But there are also times where you need to do it closer to your downstream, to your reporting layer as possible. So be flexible in this rule, but if you can do it further upstream, do it further as far upstream as possible. And then what it means is, again, upstream means closer to where the data is originally produced. Downstream is closer to where the data is consumed. So as we think of upstream, we're thinking something in the database, in the original Excel file where the stuff is being loaded at. We can do some stuff there using some tools. Downstream, there are often times where we might need to do some stuff using Tableau to clean it up downstream because we need a little bit more flexibility. So think about that philosophy. If I can clean this upstream, I'll do it there. Downstream, I will do it within the tool itself. So the basics of the Medallion architecture, there are three components here. You have your bronze layer, which is basically your raw ingestion. So this is your raw information that gets loaded and untouched and is really good for auditing purposes. So if you want to go back and look at the information as it was in its default state, you want to have your information in the bronze layer. The silver layer is your filtered, clean, augmented data. You're starting to clean it up. You're starting to get some processing. You're starting to get some business rules applied to it. And you're starting to have this information saved in your silver layer. Now, the gold layer, especially from a report and data stories component, this is the layer that we strive to have our information in. This is where we have our business level aggregates. We have clean information. We have it ready for reporting, and we have it as a standard source of truth. So we've gone through the process of understanding what our stakeholders want, the information that's there, and then we have it in this particular format where we can use it. So we strive to have our gold level information ready for reporting and storytelling. So we look at the philosophies and the technologies that are available. We can use this concept in Snowflake and Databricks, AWS, Microsoft Azure, and any other type of database tools, right? This philosophy is not so much based on the technology. It's just based on the architecture that's built out. So an example of how this can work in Snowflake is that I have connected to different data sources. I have structured, semi-structured. I'm doing some API calls. I just have information that I'm connecting. I have connected to my raw layer where I just have my raw API calls. If I'm using semi-structured data, I just have my raw JSON before I've done any transformations or anything of that nature. Then I'm starting to move it to the silver where I'm starting to clean that information. I'm starting to structure my JSON files. I'm starting to clean it up. And then I'm pushing it out to my model, my gold layer information. So this concept, again, works the same. This is how it can look in Snowflake. Again, think of the philosophies can work in any case where you are starting to connect to your bronze, silver, and then you're going to your gold. So thinking about the Medallion architecture with Tableau prep, philosophy stays the same if I am doing any type of Python jobs or if I'm connecting it to any raw Excel files or CSVs, or even if I'm connected to a database that just has stuff just loaded in there. I can use Tableau prep and this philosophy to start doing some of that cleansing and some of that transformation to then build that out and then create these gold level extracts, whether they are Tableau prep files, whether they are connected to a SQL database or the actual Excel outputs. You can use Tableau prep to actually start creating that process of getting better data quality, validating your results, and creating that gold layer, which then connects to Tableau or Excel if you're using the output that way. So some of the benefits of the gold layer is enhanced performance. You're optimizing your data processing. It's cleaner, it's faster. You're removing unnecessary noise. Scalability, it is flexible, so you can also do a lot of stuff because you're using a centralized platform. So even though you have this clean in, let's say, a SQL database, even if you want to connect Excel or Tableau to it, then you have the ability to do that because you're using a single source of truth because you've done a lot of the cleanup behind the scenes and already is done. Resource optimizations, by doing some of that cleaning and some of that removal of unnecessary noise, it makes for much faster processing from your tool of choice, whether it's Tableau or Excel. And then improved data governance. Again, we're looking for a single source of truth to have that information across the board and for people to understand what's in this gold layer and the information that's accessible there. So we're going to walk through a use case where we're going to go through the process of a big data and creating a data storytelling. So in this example, we have the VP of sales. They want to keep track of sales generated within the company. Overall, they want to know how much each region brings in and which segment generates the most revenue for each region. We want to create an interactive dashboard that analyzes the company's sales data that can be shared with regional leads as well as the VP of the sales teams. We want to understand which subcategories have the highest sales, with sales per region, sales profit and customers, what are the sales per state, which segment and region have the highest sales, and the total sales profit and orders. Using Tableau prep, as we talked about, we have our bronze level information. We're using prep to kind of clean this stuff up, and then we have an output, and then we're going to output that and use that for our data storytelling. So when we talk about our stakeholders, they oftentimes want their results, right? They typically, if you have a super technical stakeholder, they typically do not care. Well, let me say this differently. If you have a stakeholder who is technical, they do care about the technology, but some of our stakeholders are not as technical, so they really don't care if the source comes from Excel, a SQL database, a lakehouse, a semantic layer, or what have you. They really just want their results, and they want them to be accurate, and they want to be able to trust them. They care about their end results and their outcomes, so they want to understand if what I'm looking at doesn't answer my questions. What exactly am I looking at? What action can I take with this? What KPI am I measuring with this visualization? And then how does it make my business better? They want tangible outcomes. They want to make sure the stuff that they're looking at is actual actionable information, and they want the results faster and accurate as possible. So, Roadblue Analytics, we have a four-step methodology that we leverage. Step one is discovery. We ask a lot of questions on the front end. That way, we understand the full cycle and the full deployment process. So, we ask a lot of questions in the discovery phase. Step two is a wireframing. Step three is the actual development process. So, we take the wireframe of what could be possible and actually put it in development process. And then step four, we do testing and deployment. And then we go through step one when we have another iteration or any type of additional information that needs to be added.
Alrighty, so with that, let's talk about discovery and requirements gathering. So there are two parts of the discovery process, as Sekou mentioned. There's your data discovery and then your reporting discovery. For your data discovery, the first thing you want to do is identify your data sources. Where is the data located and how is our team going to be able to access it? Once we know our data sources, we have to identify, are there any data transformations that we're going to have to do? So what are the different relationships between the different tables? Are we going to have to filter any of this data, add any type of calculations, any type of transformation that we need to do from those data sources? Next, we have to identify the data refreshness or freshness. How often should this data be updated, and how often should the report be updated? Do we want to have a live connection to the data and then the report updated every 5 minutes? Or do we want to have this data pulled on a monthly basis and then the report repulled as well on a monthly basis? And then data security. So should this information be limited to just certain users, or should everybody have access to it? Because if we need to have the data secure, then we might have to do some row level calculations within Tableau. So we need to know all of that information pretty early on. Then for a reporting discovery, first thing we want to do is identify the key metrics. So what questions are we trying to answer? What are we using our data to answer? What metrics do we want to track? How should the data be sliced? Are we slicing it by region? In this use case we are we slicing it by subcategory? We want to understand all of that pretty early on. Who are our stakeholders? Who will be viewing this dashboard? What is their analytical maturity in viewing dashboards? Are they familiar with Tableau or another tool? Are they mostly familiar with PDFs or PowerPoint, static stuff? So we want to understand all of that early on so we know exactly how to develop this dashboard. Information consumption. How will the dashboard be viewed? Will it be viewed in a PDF? Will it be viewed on PowerPoint? Will it be viewed on Tableau Cloud? And should we set up alerts and subscriptions if it is viewed on Tableau Cloud? Do our users want to see this on a recurring basis? Have something emailed to their inbox, say every Monday or once a month? And then brand preferences. What's the current style guidelines? What is the marketing team use when producing material? Can we get a look at that? Is there a template that we should be using? If we're developing this for mobile, is there a mobile guideline that we should stick to? So when we're doing our discovery, we want to make sure we touch on our data discovery as well as our reporting discovery. So now going back to our use case, when we talk about our data discovery, the information is being pulled from our Snowflake environment, and we've determined that we'll have a remote desktop connection that will be provided. In terms of the data transformation, each year is currently housed in a different table, so we will have to do a union for that. And then we also need to incorporate the regional manager data. So that is what Sekou took care of earlier in the pipeline when he was discussing his steps as well. In terms of data refreshness, currently this team is in the middle of a migration. So we have data that's available from 2020 and 2021. Going forward, we will update this data on a monthly basis. So the reporting should probably also be updated on a monthly basis. And then in terms of data security, each of the regional managers, they can view the company data. However, the individuals that are on each of the regional managers' teams, we want to make sure that they can only view their team's data. So we will have to implement some row level security. In terms of reporting discovery, our key metrics, Sekou mentioned some of these earlier. So which subcategories have the highest sales? What are the sales per region over time? What are the sales profit and total orders for each of the regions? What are the sales per state? Which segment and region have the highest sales? And then we want to know the total sales, profit, and orders. In terms of our stakeholders, this will be viewed by the VP of sales, the regional managers, as well as the regional team members. Currently, the VP of Sales looks at information using a PDF, so we want to make sure that this dashboard can print out nicely on a PDF. The regional managers, they use Tableau and PDFs, and then their team members, they're currently using Tableau. So we can make it a little bit exploratory for those regional team members. In terms of information consumption, this dashboard will be viewed on Tableau Cloud. So we want to have the ability to export to PDF for the VP. And we want to set up PDF subscriptions to be sent out on a monthly basis. In terms of brand preferences, we're going to adhere to the brand guidelines that were sent via PDF with the company colors. Now let's talk about wireframing. Before we jump right into Tableau and start developing, we want to make sure that we develop a wireframe that can house all of the information and all the ideas that we have so that it can save us some time for the development process. So wireframes are created to visualize the layout and the design of the dashboard. It allows our stakeholders to visualize the layout, the structure of the dashboard before any of that development is going to take place. This allows us to gather feedback from our end users, our business analysts, and whoever's going to be using this dashboard. By investing most of our time into this wireframe, we're going to save a ton of time by the development stage because essentially we will know exactly what this end product will look like and not have to go into Tableau and start to do some of that guesswork of what should this look like for our end user. By giving them that wireframe, we're taking everything that they want into account. We're creating a user-centered design, and we're focusing on exactly what our end user is looking for. How to build a wireframe. So step one is we have to select the tool that we want to use for our wireframe. And there are two types of tools, a low fidelity tool or a high fidelity wireframing tool. The low fidelity wireframe tools is going to focus on the overall layout and structure of the wireframe. So it's not going to have like your colors, your fonts, your images. It's really just going to have an outline of those charts, probably going to be black and white, and just show the end user the structure of what this end result might look like. Some tools for that will be Micro, Balsamic, Adobe XD, and Sketch. Here's an example of a balsamic wireframe. As you can see, black and white wireframe, but it gives the basis of exactly how this dashboard will potentially look. You can see where the numbers are going to be, where the filters will be, the titles, the line charts. Same thing for the example on the right-hand side. You can see exactly where the bar charts are going to be. A high fidelity wireframe, on the other hand, is a little bit more detailed. So it's going to closely resemble what a dashboard would look like once it's completed, but without having that data associated with it. So here we're going to have that design, the layout, we're going to have the colors associated with it, images, icons, all of that will be associated with this type of wireframe to really illustrate the end result. So we can use Figma, Mockup, Sketch, Adobe XD, Adobe Photoshop, and PowerPoint to achieve a high fidelity wireframe. Here's an example of Figma wireframes. As you can see, these dashboards or these wireframes look very similar to what a dashboard would look like. They don't have any data associated with them. The numbers that you see here are just template numbers or static numbers that we've typed in. But essentially, we use these types of wireframes to portray the end result of what the dashboard would potentially look like once it's completed. Step two. You want to organize and prioritize the requirements. So here you want to have a conversation with your end user and understand based on all of their requirements, what's the most important requirement and what's the least important requirement. That way, once we're building out our wireframe, we want to have the most important information at the top of the dashboard and the least important information at the bottom of the dashboard. Remember, your end users read top to bottom, left to right. So always make sure you're organizing your requirements so that the most important is at the top and the least important is at the bottom. So going back to our use case, we have all of our original requirements at the top listed there, and we've had that conversation with the VP as well as the regional managers and refined it a bit so that we know that the most important information is going to be that overall total sales, profit, and orders information, and our least important information will be that subcategories and sales information. Now what you'll see is that once we've listed out all of our requirements and we've refined them 1 through 6, what's going to be at the top of our dashboard will be that total sales, profit, and orders, followed by the sales per region over time. And we want to make sure in the bottom right corner of our dashboard, we'll have that subcategories by sales so that when the user is reading this, they'll understand the highest information, the most important information will be at the top of the dashboard, and our least important information will be at the bottom of the dashboard. Next step, based on all of our requirements, we want to go ahead and select the best chart type. So here I like to have a conversation with the end user again to determine, is there a particular way that they like to view this requirement already? Like, how are they currently seeing it? If not, what's going to be the best chart type to achieve this requirement? So for total sales and profit, we've determined that a band or a big angry number will be the best type of chart. So this is just a standard number that provides summary information that we can place at the top of our dashboard. What are the sales per region over time? So when we talk about over time, that's typically a trend. So a line chart or an area chart will be best to illustrate that. In terms of the sales, profit, and total orders for each of the regions, we can best display that with a text table because we're looking at multiple measurements and one dimension. In terms of which segment and region have the highest sales, we could either illustrate that with a highlight table or a bar chart. Sales per state, we could definitely use a map to illustrate that so that we can have some highlights and some colors on the map to show which states have the highest sales. And then subcategories and their sales, we definitely use a bar chart for that. And last but not least, when you're building out your wireframe, be sure to incorporate your end user's preferences. So start to think of ways that you can use icons and colors to start to bring the wireframe to life. In this example, we know that we're going to export this dashboard to a PDF. So we can have a PDF export button located at the top, info icon to tell them more about the dashboard. Any filters can be up here as well. And that export to image button can be located at the top. Followed by that, you want to have your bands. Typically, I like to use icons to just add a bit of visual appeal to the dashboard. And these icons, you'll find them placed within the band area instead of just scattered everywhere on the dashboard. I think it's neat to have them just in your band area. Then as you're building out your wireframe, make sure that you're using a grid-like format, right? Do a 2x2 or a 3x3, or just making sure that your visualizations are aligned. And as you're creating your wireframe, make sure that you're using no more than two dominant colors. Go chart by chart and ask the question of, is there something that I want to highlight or draw the end user's attention to on this wireframe or on this visualization? If the answer is yes, that's where you will use color. If the answer is no, then you won't apply any color there. And those are your wireframe guidelines. Next, let's talk about development. So once you have your wireframe completed, the next step is to select the tool. And what better tool to use than Tableau, because it's really great for data storytelling. Tableau allows us to take that raw data and turn it into interactive and visually appealing charts, graphs, and dashboards. What we can do is we can facilitate the creation of data-driven narratives. It allows us to integrate all of the various data sources that we're working with, do some of that transformation with calculations and filter, and create those charts that we need so that our users can derive that insight from their visualizations. Once you have your wireframe completed, you want to go ahead and go into Tableau, and the first step will be to integrate that data source. So earlier, Sekou mentioned that gold layer, and you'll have a very clean output. We want to take that output and we want to integrate that into Tableau. Then we're going to translate the wireframe into a functional dashboard. So we're going to build each of the worksheets that are associated with the various parts of the wireframe, and then construct that dashboard so that it can replicate the exact wireframe that we were approved for. Once you've built the dashboard, you want to test it for performance, right? Make sure there's no lag. Make sure that filters are working correctly. Action filters are working correctly, especially if you're working with a large data set. And then in terms of accessibility and responsiveness, you want to make sure that your dashboard can be consumed by a large audience. Make sure that when you have a dashboard, you ask the question of, would somebody else with maybe like a color blindness deficiency or an accessibility need, would they be able to interact with this dashboard? Would they be able to view the items or view colors and highlighting on this dashboard? So make sure that your dashboard fits compliance and accessibility standards. So once you have that wireframe, You want to translate it into your Tableau visualization. And based on our use case, this is exactly what that would look like.
All right, so now that we have built out the wireframe and we actually developed the dashboard, let's walk through the process of testing and deploying the dashboard. So one, we want to make sure that we publish the data source and that we schedule the necessary refreshes to keep the data up to date. We do not want stale data. We want our relevant data to be information that can be consumed on a good cadence. Also, understand the type of data that you have. If your source data set only gets refreshed weekly, there's not necessarily a requirement in Tableau to make a daily refresh. So understand how often your source data gets refreshed can help optimize your resources. And please document your work. You will thank yourself in the future if you document your work. When it comes to reporting, meet with your end users to review the output. Understand if you hit the mark, gather feedback, and make a plan to iterate on it. Enabling alerts and subscriptions, as Chantilly mentioned before we asked the questions of how people are going to engage with it. Monitor the usage report. So even though you put a dashboard out there, report out there, understand if people are actually using this and what that looks like. And then don't forget to have your end users quantify your value. So there is a feedback loop that we follow. First step is we want to actually gather the feedback. That could be forms of a survey or meetings that you're gathering. Or having with stakeholders, so on and so forth. But the surveys are typically the easiest one. But you just want to gather that information and understand what's going on. Number two is to analyze feedback. So using Tableau, you can put those results in the Tableau and actually analyze it and see what's going on. Some of that could be, questions that you're asking. Some of that could be quantifiable questions, but you really want to analyze the feedback. Step two is you want to act on the feedback. So you want to take actionable results and look at it and put that stuff into the next iteration of the dashboard. And then step four is actually follow up. So you want to follow up with stakeholders and see if what you've analyzed and acted on is it hitting the mark. And then do that process over and over again to make sure that you are continuously improving the dashboard that you've had built out. So again, at Royal Blue Analytics, we follow a 4-step methodology. Step one is discovery. Step two is wireframing. Step three is actual development of the dashboard. And then step four is we go through the process of testing and deploying it, and we walk through that loop over and over again. So with that, I am Sekou Tyler again, and the founder and CEO of Royal Blue Analytics. And you can use the QR code here to scan and go to our website.
And I am Chantilly Jagannath, the founder and CEO of Medallion Data, and this is my QR code as well.
So thank you so much for taking time out. We really appreciate you viewing our session today, and we all hope you all have a fantastic day.
Thank you.